Incredible millionaire discovers unexpected love with a poor cleaning lady after 15 long years. Jack Thompson paced the chilly hallway of his corporate office, frustration simmering beneath the surface. The glow of his phone illuminated his face, a reminder of meetings he couldn't afford to miss. As he fidgeted with his keycard, dread crept into his chest. He was locked out. 15 years had brought him wealth and respect in the tech world, yet now he stood on the edge of the precipice, questioning if it was all worth it. Would anyone notice if he didn't make the presentation? His thoughts spiraled as echoes of boardroom murmurs taunted him. Are you still the same Jack, or have you become just another suit caught in the game? His world felt heavy, a layered realm of expectations, competition, and hollow victories. As his breath formed clouds in the frigid air, the isolation of corporate life sank its claws deeper. Jack hadn't truly connected with anyone in what felt like ages. The incessant glimmer of wealth around him seemed to mock his unfulfilled desire for authenticity. He felt like an actor trapped in a role he no longer wished to play. Then Maria appeared, a warmly lit ember in the stark hallway. She moved with a grace that belied her humble profession, her smile radiating kindness without knowing the burden she lifted. Jack hesitated, torn between gratitude for human contact and the gnawing thought of societal divisions that held him captive. How could someone like her truly understand the invisible chains that bound him to his opulent life? In that moment of vulnerability, she offered him coffee, an unexpected gesture that felt both intimate and foreign. Their conversation flowed, laden with tales of resilience and struggle, igniting something inside him. Every word she shared painted a picture of a life rich in values Jack yearned to reclaim. Her laughter echoed, pulling him closer to a warmth he thought he had long outgrown. Yet, with each shared moment, a gnawing fear gripped him tighter. He was dangerously straddling two worlds. Would he betray her, alongside the integrity she represented? He felt the weight of eyes already judging the disparity between their lives. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Maria's laughter faded into the chill, Jack confronted a deeper chasm. A betrayal from his inner circle loomed imminent, threatening to expose their blossoming connection. What was once an innocent friendship twisted into a dangerous game of appearances, where losing could mean endless judgment. The risk of loving her began to seep into his bones, spreading tension throughout his limbs. Racked with indecision as he considered the price of his happiness, he found himself spiraling deeper into despair. In his heart, he longed to break free from the constraints of expectations, yet the fear of being branded an outcast by his peers clawed at him. Every encounter with Maria felt like a beacon of hope piercing through the fog of wealth, but at what cost? The threshold of his heart trembled with every choice. Was embracing love worth shattering the image he had spent years painstakingly constructing? As Jack stared into the depths of his dilemma, the walls closing in and reality clawing at his mind, he knew the choice ahead held the potential to define not only his character but his future. In that moment, he had to confront one unbearable truth: could love really transcend the barriers that had long since imprisoned him? Jack took a deep, shaky breath, the cold air sharp against his lungs. Every corner of the corporate world screamed for him to maintain the facade he had meticulously crafted over the years. Yet Maria's smile lingered in his mind, incendiary and disruptive. She represented a choice: the intoxicating reality of vulnerability versus the suffocating certainty of his current existence. He turned away from the heavy doors of the boardroom, seeking sanctuary in a quieter space: the rooftop terrace. The bustling city stretched beneath him like a maze he had long mastered but found increasingly burdensome. He leaned against the railing, the world painted in a chaotic array of night lights and distant honks, reflecting a discord that mirrored his internal storm. He whispered to himself, "What do you really want, Jack?" Each question hung in the air, an echo of doubt challenging the impenetrable creature he had become. In those minutes of silence, a transformation unfolded within him. This was not merely about the potential joy that Maria offered, nor solely the fear of societal judgment. It was a reckoning. He had built his empire on technological ingenuity and strategic alliances, but what had he accomplished in the realm of personal integrity? Had he lost sight of the values that once drove him, values that aligned with the tenacity and authenticity Maria embodied? The skyline twinkled, but even in its luster, he could see through the surface. Each light was a testament to ambition, much like his own, and yet, they were also reminders of those who sought connection. He had been too focused on scales and metrics, hovering above genuine human experiences. Did he want to be remembered as a cutthroat CEO or a man who valued substantive relationships? The weight of professional accolades had become increasingly stale against the backdrop of his growing yearning for authenticity. Just then, his phone buzzed messages from the board members, each demanding his insights on the upcoming quarterly report. They needed his vision, his precision. But did they need the real Jack, or the automaton he had turned into? In that moment, he took a decisive step forward. He would deliberately choose authenticity. Jack's mind raced with possibilities. What if he started redefining success, not just as wealth but as fulfillment? Perhaps it was time to slow the rampant pace of his life, to embrace discomfort, to engage deeply with those around him, especially with Maria. He realized that their conversations hadn't just lit a spark, they had begun catalyzing a rebellion against the very limits he had allowed himself to be bound by. And then, it hit him. The impending betrayal from his peers, the inner turmoil, it was all connected. If he could dare to love Maria openly, he would expose the superficial bonds he had constructed within his professional realm. His connection with her would shine a light on the hypocrisy he's lived for too long. Jack's heart raced as he recognized this might be the risk worth taking. He could refuse to hide in the shadows of two worlds. He would step into the light, vulnerable and honest. A decision crystallized in the depths of his heart. But before he could act, the ominous sound of clattering footsteps approached. Jack turned sharply, tension returning as he saw Carl, his right-hand man and closest confidant, striding purposefully toward him. Carl's expression was unreadable, but Jack sensed a storm brewing behind those carefully crafted features. The moment of confrontation loomed large, threatening to unveil truths Jack wasn't prepared to face. Would Carl become an ally or an adversary in this unfolding narrative of transformation? Jack steeled himself. He had taken the first step on a path of authenticity. Now, he would have to navigate the repercussions of that choice. Would Carl accept this new Jack, one who was ready to embrace his humanity, or would he cling to the Jack they all thought they knew? The winds of change rustled as he braced for the impending revelation. Jack squared his shoulders, the weight of his decision clashing with the reality of Carl's presence. As his right-hand man closed the distance, Jack's mind raced, grappling with the duality of who he was and who he aspired to be. The sincerity he yearned to embrace felt like an elaborate mask slipping away, revealing the raw vulnerability underneath. Jack. Carl's voice broke through the tension, a mix of concern and frustration lacing his tone. What are you doing up here? The board is waiting for you. The urgency in Carl's demeanor pricked at Jack's resolve, urging him to revert to his well-practiced persona, the composed CEO that everyone expected, but it was as if Carl sensed the shift within him. You've been different lately, Carl continued, narrowing his gaze. What is going on? The question pressed against Jack's conscience like an anvil, demanding he share the truth hiding in plain sight. I've been thinking, he started, hesitating as his heart thundered in his chest. About what matters, you know. Being real. Carl's brow furrowed, his skepticism palpable. Real? This is the corporate world, Jack. We climb, we conquer, we play the game. You can't just drop that. With those words, Jack felt a wellspring of defiance awaken in him. Could he continue down a path paved with ambition while forsaking his humanity? Why not? He challenged, his voice steady despite the conflict swirling within. Why can't we redefine success? What if we stepped away from our facades for a moment? Carl crossed his arms, a defensive posture Jack had seen numerous times before. You think it's as simple as wanting to be authentic? There are stakes, Jack. If you decide to change now, it could cost you everything we've built. Each sentence resonated with a truth Jack had ignored for too long, but the stakes were already shifting for him. Jack had spent years climbing mountains only to discover they were made of sand. "I'd rather risk it all for something real than hide behind this image anymore," he confessed fiercely. "Especially if it means being with someone like Maria." The mention of Maria caused an unexpected flicker of acknowledgement in Carl's eyes. Was it surprise, or perhaps a hint of disdain? "Her. You know how the board would react if they found out you were involved with someone outside our circle. It isn't just about you, Jack." And there it was. The brutal reality of his predicament crashed down like a wave, mingling fear with exhilaration. So what? Jack clenched his fists, the decision sharpening into focus. "I've built this world on the backs of lies and appearances. What I've learned from Maria is that I want to be true to myself. If that means losing my position, then so be it." Jack's breath hitched slightly, torn between the embers of clarity ignited by Maria's influence and the cold pragmatism that Carl represented. If he continued down this path, how far would he lead his company into the depths of discontent, risking the very relationships that had once defined him? Carl looked at him, an assessment flickering behind his eyes before he blinked away the moment of vulnerability. "You really believe you can do this? Stand against the tide?" "I know I can," Jack replied, a fire igniting within. "It's time to expose the fragility of this facade and care about something more than just numbers." Carl stepped back, eyes narrowing in calculation. "You might not be ready for the fallout of this decision. And what about us, your team? What if they don't follow?" Jack felt the storm brewing, a swell of uncertainty gripped him. But as he looked into Carl's uncertain gaze, an unexpected thought crossed his mind. What if confronting the truth turned out to be the ally he needed, rather than the adversary? "Then I will forge a new path," Jack said, voice unwavering. "One that aligns with my values, and if you can't support it." The words trailed off into the open air, leaving a gaping possibility of estrangement. But his resolve deepened with every heartbeat. The winds howled around them, carrying the tension into the expanse of the cityscape. As Carl took a breath, weighing his options, Jack felt the world shift just a fraction, a weight of destiny rolling in. "What are you really willing to lose?" Carl asked, his tone shifting slightly, probing deeper. Caught in a moment of introspection, Jack's answer was far from clear, but the stakes had never felt so tangible. The moment was burgeoning, straining against the confines of their dialogue. As Carl met his gaze, Jack prepared himself for whatever confrontation was to come next. The boardroom lay ahead, its polished glass and steel facade reflecting a world Jack had inhabited for years, yet now felt entirely alien. Rising within him was an urgency fueled by more than just fear. It was a burgeoning desire to be free from pretense and the suffocating expectations that had shaped him. He took one last look at Carl, who stood bewildered, caught between loyalty to a flawed corporate ethos and the uncertain promise of authenticity. Jack inhaled deeply, bracing himself for the monumental step he was about to take. It wasn't just his career on the line, it was his very identity. The thinking man's battle raged on, questioning his self-worth. Who was Jack without the empire, the accolades, and the hollow gestures of success? The image of Maria flashed in his mind, a stark contrast to the corporate world he had constructed. She represented honesty, a liberating simplicity that he yearned for, yet felt so far removed from. "Jack," Carl interrupted the silence, "you might regret this decision. This isn't just about you, it's about the entire team and the legacy we've built." The last word made Jack wince. Legacy. As if building a reputation on the quicksand of deception could somehow grant permanence. "I need to find out what my true legacy is," Jack countered, a newfound determination fueling his words. "I'm ready for the fallout, Carl. I have to be. No amount of success will ever fill this emptiness if it isn't genuine." He turned on his heel, making his way to the boardroom door, a mix of trepidation and exhilaration propelling him forward. His heart pounded in his chest as he pushed through the door, facing his colleagues, an assembly of expectant gazes trained on him. In that moment, every piece of conventional business wisdom warped into meaningless jargon. "Thank you all for being here," he started, gripping the edge of the table for balance. "I realize I've been a part of something that values image over integrity, and I want to change that. I want us to embrace a new culture where authenticity isn't just a buzzword, but a driving principle of our work. A murmur rippled through the room. Discomfort swirled like a storm. Jack's heart raced in anticipation of their reactions. Some faces were curious, others incredulous. Each expression became a reflection of his inner chaos. What would they think? Would they support him on this new quest or see him as weak? It only took a moment for a familiar voice to challenge him. And what will that mean for our quarterly earnings, Jack? Are you really ready to risk financial stability for some notion of being real? It was Ethan, a staunch defender of the status quo. Financial stability is important, Jack affirmed, feeling the weight of his convictions spin into clarity. But what type of company do we want to be? One built on fear and pretense? Or one that fosters growth and creativity through genuine connection? With each word, Jack felt the team start to lean in, attention shifting. Ideas of potential grew palpable in the air, sparking whispers of possibility among his colleagues. As he continued, he noticed the flicker of questioning eyes, a mixture of skepticism and intrigue. There was something to be said for vulnerability, and it resonated louder than figures and forecasts. It seemed like the seeds of change were beginning to take root, but doubt still gnawed at him. Suddenly, amidst the whirlwind of thoughts and voices, he remembered Maria's unwavering belief in him, her laughter, and her dreams that transcended the surface-level fabrications of wealth and fame. The vision of forging a new path for both himself and the company felt intricately connected to her spirit. "Look, I can't promise immediate results," he stated, grounding his resolve in honesty. "But if we align our values with our actions, we'll not only survive, we'll thrive in ways we never imagined." The pause that followed was thick with tension. Jack's heart thundered as the board members exchanged glances, contemplating his proposition. The decision hanging in the air was not just about him, it was reminiscent of an individual crossroad, the kind he hoped to inspire in his colleagues. Could they really embrace the risk of authenticity without losing everything? A silence settled, and at that moment, Jack could sense the inevitable confrontation with reality that loomed. Would he be embraced as a leader of change, or would they close the door on his ideas, forcing him to choose between his values and the elaborate career he had painstakingly built? As their deliberations unfolded, Jack felt the gravity of the coming storm, knowing it would either solidify his journey toward true leadership or offer a painful lesson in devotion to the intact image he sought to shatter. Every heartbeat echoed questions that remained unanswered, compelling him to contemplate if the true battle lay not within his colleagues, but within himself. And as confrontation brewed on the horizon, he wondered, was he truly prepared to face the realities of his decisions, or would he find himself retreating into the chaos of what he had always known? Jack's heart continued to pound, each beat a reminder that this moment held the key to his transformation. The boardroom felt smaller, the air thicker as silence surrounded him. He glanced at Carl, who sat with a look of kinship mixed with concern, as if he too battled the same inner conflict Jack faced. Then, a voice broke the stillness. Ethan again, his tone dripping with skepticism. "You talk about authenticity like it's some sort of miracle cure, Jack. But the reality is that our clients only care about results. You can't rewrite the rules overnight." Jack felt his blood rush, urgency igniting within him. "You're right," he responded, pinning Ethan with his gaze. "But what about us? What kind of results do we want to produce? Are we really so willing to sacrifice authenticity for numbers, for praise that's rooted in facades? I am tired of juggling masks." A ripple of murmurs flowed through the room, a blend of agreement and disagreement. Jack's mind raced, searching for the right words to bring clarity to his colleagues' murky perspectives. For a fleeting moment, he envisioned what it could mean to inspire, to be the catalyst for a shift, one that broke the barriers he had long embraced. "Imagine if we were honest about our shortcomings and celebrated our failures as much as our successes," he continued, emboldened by the flicker of curiosity in the room. "What if we could create a culture that prioritizes collaboration over competition? That cultivates vulnerability, rather than hiding behind polished reports and accolades?" Jack's fervor piqued interest in several faces. Sarah, a project manager known for her meticulous execution, was nodding slowly. The unease on her brow seemed to soften, hinting that perhaps the time for transformation might be ripe, yet doubt tugged at Jack's core. But authenticity can't be performance, he added, hesitant but resolute. It has to be a woven fabric of who we are. If I'm truly going to lead this shift, I need to lay myself bare, vulnerabilities and all. The tension felt tangible, thickening the air between Jack and his colleagues. Would they see his call for authenticity as a sign of weakness or strength? As he scanned the room, he recognized a familiar resistance, a collective fear of the unknown, a retaliation born from years of conditioning. It was Ethan who, perhaps sensing the shift, leaned forward again. So what's next, Jack? Do we scrap the years of success in favor of a sentimental image of togetherness? This sounds like a lot of wishful thinking. Jack clenched his jaw, meeting Ethan's challenge. No. It's not about scrapping our history, it's about reframing it. Acknowledge the past but push forward with intention. He felt a surge of adrenaline. This was the moment he could ignite change. We can redefine success. It starts with us admitting when we're wrong, learning, and growing. I'm prepared to embrace that, are you? A quiet murmur began among the team, a cautious contemplation of Jack's words that began to wash over them. Then I'm in, Carl said finally, breaking the silence. The revelation hung in the air, filled with a hesitant optimism. One being acknowledged his fears, taking the first step towards the radical shift that Jack envisioned. As Jack absorbed the meaning of Carl's support, reverberating hope fluttered in his chest. But there was still an underlying current of tension. The room was far from settled. All right, if we're venturing into unknown territory, we need a plan, Sarah spoke, her authority almost palpable. We can't just dive in blindly. Absolutely, Jack agreed, invigorated by the prospect of collaboration. I propose we hold another meeting. Let's gather our ideas and design steps towards this new culture. Each of us must contribute to shape what it means to be authentic in our work. But as the conversations began to shift toward logistics, an emerging doubt crested within Jack. What did it truly require to lead this change? Could he genuinely foster an environment of authenticity, or would he find it too overwhelming to carry the weight of everyone's fears? In that moment, Jack's resolve hardened. He had started this journey yearning for a legacy defined by transparency, not by profit margins. A quiet revolution ignited within him, a call to lead with vulnerability. As they wrapped up the meeting, a mix of apprehension and excitement buzzed beneath the surface. Jack left the boardroom, buoyed by a fragile community that supported him, yet acutely aware of the titanic efforts ahead. Would they succeed in changing the company's culture, or would remnants of the past strangle their burgeoning hope? Jack pondered the outcome as he made his way to his office. The desire for change coursed through him, demanding answers he was not yet ready to face. With every step, uncertainty gnawed at him. What would he discover about himself as he ventured deeper into this uncharted landscape? The gravity of the impending conflict loomed large, ready to become a defining chapter of his life. Tomorrow would unveil either the limits of his courage or pave the way for profound redemption. Jack settled into his chair, the hum of activity in the office now a distant murmur. The meeting had set in motion a ripple of determination and doubt, and he knew he had to navigate it carefully. His thoughts circled back to Carl's tentative support and Sarah's insistence on crafting a plan. There was a sense of purpose emerging, but it felt precarious. Was he really ready to lead this charge into the unknown? A simple knock interrupted his thoughts. It was Sarah, her expression a blend of purpose and uncertainty. Hey, Jack. Can we talk? She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Sure, sit down. Jack motioned to the chair across from him, instinctively leaning back to maintain a semblance of composure. I appreciate what you said earlier, she began, her voice steadying. But I'm a bit worried. This sort of shift, it's not just about talking the talk, you know? It requires buy-in from everyone, and there's a lot of fear that we're not addressing. Her words struck a chord within him. Fear had been his silent companion for so long. You're right, Sarah. But the truth is, we can't address it all at once. I need to start by confronting my own fears first. Let us build from that. Jack watched as Sarah's expression softened slightly. She was the embodiment of the old guard, precise, methodical, and cautious. What are you afraid of? She asked boldly, unexpected curiosity sparking to life in her eyes. His throat became dry as he considered the question. Failure, he admitted quietly. What if I can't create this environment? What if I let everyone down? He didn't know why he felt compelled to share his vulnerability, but it felt liberating. Every leader faces that fear, she responded softly. But you're not alone in this. If we're going to change, we all need to be willing to admit our fears and work through them together. Sarah's suggestion resonated deeply. Together, they could foster a culture of openness, share their struggles, and know they didn't have to carry the weight alone. Maybe we can integrate vulnerability sessions into our meetings. A space for everyone to share their challenges openly, Jack suggested, grappling with the implications of such openness. I like that, she said, her internal gears visibly turning. But how do you think we can convince the more resistant team members? Acknowledging that resistance was a critical part of this journey weighed heavily on Jack's shoulders. It's not just about convincing them, it's about showing them how vulnerability can lead to strength and creativity. Each story shared will chip away at the fear. Their conversation flowed naturally from concern to strategy, each brainstorming session energizing Jack. He felt the growing urgency of clarity. If they wanted real change, he had to break down the walls, not only in the company but also within himself. Let us draft a framework for these sessions. We can present it at the next meeting and gauge reactions, Jack decided, motivated again by a sense of direction. Sarah smiled, a flicker of enthusiasm lighting her demeanor. Okay, let us get to work then. But remember, Jack, this is a team effort, and sometimes, pushing through fear means taking a hard look at what's right in front of us, including our mistakes. Jack nodded, his confidence bolstered as he shared in shaping this new culture. I understand. I've made my share of mistakes too. It's time to face those openly. But what if those mistakes lead to pushback? What if we fall short of expectations? Then we learn from them. This isn't a straight path. We'll stumble. But it's how we respond to those stumbles that matter. Her words lingered in his mind long after Sarah left his office. Jack stared at the blank wall, now a canvas for all the possibilities they had discussed. He was on the precipice of profound change, which exhilarated and terrified him in equal measure. What if he failed to foster this environment of authenticity and openness? The weight of accountability pressed down on him again, yet underneath it, an unfamiliar resilience began to bloom. Jack realized the essence of leadership lay not in projecting perfection but in embracing imperfection. As he began drafting ideas for their vulnerability sessions, uncertainty flickered at the edges of his resolve. He wondered what stories would surface, what raw humanity lay beneath the polished facades they all wore. With the flicker of courage coming alive within him, Jack's fingers hovered over his keyboard. Was he prepared to truly lead in this way? The question loomed large, just as the next meeting approached. Tomorrow, he would face not just his colleagues but perhaps, at last, the parts of himself he had long withheld. Would courage emerge victorious, or would fear snuff it out? In that moment of reflection and determination, he felt the gravity of decisions yet to be made, and he steeled himself for the challenges ahead. The time had come to face not only his team but the implications of his own journey towards authenticity. The following morning felt different, a thick fog of both anticipation and dread enveloping Jack as he arrived at the office. He paused briefly in the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. This was the day everything could shift, not just for him but for the entire team. Even as he spoke with Sarah yesterday, the gravity of what he proposed weighed heavily on his mind. Entering the office, Jack immediately sensed the atmosphere tense, charged with the latent energy that often accompanies significant change. As he passed through the sea of cubicles, he nodded at his colleagues, but their responses were muted, their eyes reflecting the uncertainty that rippled beneath the surface. Jack steeled himself, wanting to project confidence despite the apprehension churning inside him. The conference room was bustling with chatter when he stepped in, a wave of optimism crashing against the dam of anxiety. Jack caught sight of Sarah already engaged in conversation with Carl, their expressions carefully controlled. He could see in their eyes that they shared his concerns about the meeting. It felt like the calm before a storm. He knew turmoil was waiting just beneath the surface. Hey, everyone, Jack started, his voice breaking slightly as he stood to address the group. "Thank you for coming today. I know we've been discussing some important changes, and I want to be upfront about this shift toward greater vulnerability within our team." The murmurs quieted, eyes narrowed with skepticism. He felt the palpable hesitation in the room, an uncomfortable acknowledgement of the vulnerability he was requesting from all of them. To his surprise, Carl was the first to respond. "Is that really the approach we need, Jack? What about the risks? If we start sharing our mistakes, what will that do to the project's reputation?" At that moment, the weight of Carl's words struck deep, igniting a fire of doubt. But Jack had no intention of backing down. His mind raced through the conversations he had with Sarah. "I understand the concern, Carl. But I believe the risks of not addressing our fears are far greater. If we allow fear of failure to dominate our culture, we'll miss out on innovation and collaboration. Authenticity will strengthen our team, not weaken it." Sarah flashed him a supportive smile, nodding in agreement. Jack, encouraged, turned his focus back to the group, his voice steadying. "We all have different fears, and it's okay to acknowledge them. Together, we can create an environment where we learn from our mistakes instead of hiding them. It's time we break the boundaries." The room remained silent, every face reflecting a struggle between the old way, the safety of silence, and the new, unnerving prospect of openness. Jack could feel the walls closing in as he awaited reactions, doubt clawing at him. His heart raced, and every breath felt heavier, bracing for the pushback. He observed the group's reactions. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others bore expressions of intrigue mingled with fear. Jack pressed on, despite the uncertainty threatening to erode his confidence. "Let us try its simple vulnerability sessions. I'm committed to sharing my own experiences, my failures. I'll lead by example." Just then, a voice from the back broke through the tension. "Laura, always the steadfast critic. You really think we'll just lay it all out there? It's risky, Jack. What if we open up and it backfires?" Her challenge echoed in Jack's mind, sending chills down his spine. This was it, the moment where he had to confront not only the team's fears but also his own. "We may stumble," Jack admitted, meeting her gaze head-on. "But I truly believe that vulnerability breeds innovation. The only thing we'll lose if we try is the fear that has held us back for too long." Amid the palpable tension, silence hung heavily in the air, and Jack could feel every skeptical gaze burning into him. Would he rally them to take the leap or be met with resistance that would derail their burgeoning progress? Jack faced the room, determined, ready to push through the intangible walls of fear. It was now or never. With a nod of resolve, he concluded, "I welcome all your perspectives, and we can refine this together. But let us at least try. We owe it to ourselves and the team." And just as he finished, the unexpected happened. Sarah raised her hand, her voice clear and unwavering. "I'm with Jack. I believe in this idea, and I hope you'll all join us." Jack's heart soared momentarily at the spark of support, but he remained acutely aware of the challenges ahead. The risk of failure loomed large, pushing against the fragile hope he had cultivated in just a few days. Would he summon the fortitude to lead them through their resistance into a brighter future, or would fear triumph over their aspirations? With every eye still on him, Jack held his breath, waiting for a response that could either validate his vision or lead him to question everything. The stakes had never been higher, and everything depended on the choices laid before him. Jack stood in the conference room, the weight of the moment pressing down on him like a lead blanket. Time stretched, each second sprawling into an eternity as the team digested his proposal. Unlike the usual daily grind, where the din of reports and updates drowned out deeper conversations, today felt different. Every eye fixated on him, an amalgamation of skepticism and curiosity, demanding clarity from the fog of his ambition. "Well," Laura finally broke the silence, arms crossed tightly. "What if we fail? What if your idea of openness doesn't work, and all we achieve is a mess?" Her question, laced with apprehension, ignited a flicker of doubt in Jack's mind. He had envisioned this moment, framed it as a bold leap into the unknown, but standing here now felt less like bravery and more like recklessness. Could he afford to stake not just his reputation but the unity of the team on a principle so fragile as vulnerability? The stakes were monumental. Gathering his resolve, he replied, "Failure is part of learning, Laura. Each time we embrace our mistakes, we forge the connections that drive us to innovate." He sensed a shift in the atmosphere, the slightest crack in the wall of resistance. But he wasn't out of the woods yet. Carl's brow furrowed, doubt etched deep into his features. And if it turns into chaos? We might face accountability issues down the line. Are we prepared for that? Perhaps, Jack countered, feeling the embers of his confidence reignite. But what about the chaos hidden behind closed doors? Chaos creeps in silently when we refuse to address our vulnerabilities. Together, we'd be finding strength in our collective imperfections. As Jack spoke, he pictured what it could mean for the team. He visualized a space where sharing not only their successes but also their failures could lead to innovation. In a world tethered by constant success, the allure of authenticity became magnetic. But could he negotiate this path with a team so deeply entrenched in tradition? The murmurs from his colleagues began to rise, indicating a conversation brewing just beneath the surface. Jack listened intently, and he could decipher the delicate balance between fear and hope, between skepticism and intrigue. It occurred to him how personal this was. It wasn't just about the project or the team, it was about the kind of leader he aspired to be. "Let us make this an experiment," Sarah interjected, her tone fiery. "A trial of vulnerability sessions. We share our failures, support each other, and see where it leads us." Jack's right, the path may not be smooth, but let us own that unpredictability together. Jack's heart swelled at Sarah's bravery, grateful for her voice slicing through residual doubt. A wave of appreciation washed over him, but it quickly slipped into a fear of expectations. What if his leadership faltered? What if he couldn't inspire his team to trust him? Seeing Carl's expression shift from skepticism to contemplation, Jack seized the moment. "How about this? Let us agree to hold each other accountable, creating a charter for what our sessions will look like. If at any point someone feels uncomfortable or unsafe, we can reassess and adjust." He could see the interest peaking as he painted a picture of cooperation and agency, where each member could feel empowered rather than merely vulnerable. It felt right, yet fraught with risk. "Okay," Carl relented, narrowing his eyes as a reluctant smile crept onto his face. "But I still think this could go sideways. Team dynamics are delicate. Just know that if this fails, you'll be the one taking the hit." With that, a reluctant wave of agreement washed across the room. Jack felt an unexpected thrill amidst the tension. They were willing to step forward with him, however hesitantly. After the meeting, while his colleagues trickled out, Jack remained, staring at the remnants of their discussion strewn across the table. Sarah sidled up beside him, her eyes bright with anticipation. "You did well, Jack. I've seen you grow so much. Just keep pushing." He smiled back, but beneath the surface, uncertainty clung to him like a shadow. This step into vulnerability could reshape everything, but was he equipped to lead them through potential fractures? As Jack glanced around the now empty room, inspiration flickered within him. He had taken a definitive step in leadership, yet his vision was still hazy. What if they found strength together? But the questions loomed large. What would happen next? With his heart pounding, he pondered a question that sought answers from depths he hadn't explored. If vulnerability was the key to their transformation, what hidden fears did he himself need to confront? As he left the conference room, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenge was just beginning. Jack returned home that evening, a whirlwind of thoughts swirling in his mind. The discussions from earlier played on repeat like a broken record. Each question, each skeptical glance from his team seeped into his thoughts. He had articulated a vision, yet the doubt enveloped him like a fog that wouldn't lift. Sitting at his kitchen table, he absent-mindedly stirred coffee, seeking clarity in the swirling dark liquid. He looked out the window, watching the streetlight flicker through the gloom of dusk. What if he was wrong? What if this idea of vulnerability unraveled not just their project but the very fabric of the team? His fingers tapped the table nervously, the sudden flash of insecurity a stark contrast to the resoluteness he had tried to project. The thought of failure loomed over him, heavy and unyielding. But now, the weight felt personal. Was his identity truly tied to his ability to lead? He had never cared much for traditional accolades or recognition. Yet, here he was, desperately wanting his colleagues to see him as credible. Fear crept in. What if he faltered? What if they were right to be skeptical? Jack leaned back in his chair, inhaling sharply. He needed to confront his own uncertainties. How could he ask his team to be vulnerable if he couldn't do the same? The vulnerability sessions would need genuine leadership. His leadership. He hastily grabbed a notebook and began jotting down thoughts, moments from past failures, each one a skeletal structure of fear and doubt that he remembered his early career. The chaotic rush of his first project haunted him still. Miscommunication led to an absolute disaster, and he had faced the aftermath alone, drowning under blame. In hindsight, he saw how the fear of sharing made him retreat into himself, a self-imposed isolation. But was that who he wanted to be now? The man who hid from challenges? Jack's thoughts turned to the people he admired, the leaders who openly shared their struggles, the ones who turned mistakes into teachable moments. They attracted loyalty, respect, and true connection. Could he emulate those qualities? He understood the concept, but understanding and implementing were separate beasts. His fingers paused over the pen, and doubt pricked at him sharply. He needed to model what he preached. If he truly wished to create a team culture of accountability, he had to step into that space first, starting with sharing the most painful moments from his own journey. He wrote down a list of topics for the first vulnerability session. His failures, his fears, even his shame. Would they be ready to hear that? Could he put his heart on the line? The very thought ignited something inside him, a flicker of resilience that chased the dark clouds of doubt. The next morning, he entered the conference room with a renewed sense of purpose. This session would be pivotal not just for the team, but for him. It was a risk, yes, but sometimes, growth required the willingness to stand naked before others, emotionally exposed. As he took a seat, anticipating the familiar faces of doubt and skepticism, he felt a surge of determination course through him. The door swung open, and in they filed, eyes meeting his with curiosity. Sarah smiled encouragingly. Jack sensed an undercurrent of expectations, a silent invitation to share. As he stood, heart racing, words stammering while his heart drummed louder than ever before, he realized this was not just a meeting. It was a leap of faith, and he could either embrace it or retreat. Just as he opened his mouth, ready to confront his inner fears, the door swung open again, and someone unexpected entered. The atmosphere shifted instantly, tension snapping like a taut wire. "Sorry I'm late," came the remark, drenched in an unfamiliar voice. Jack's stomach knotted. Were they ready for this? Who was willing to follow through on this newfound promise of vulnerability? The moment hung precariously, and Jack was left grappling with the uncertainty laid bare before him. What did this new element mean for their delicate experiment? Jack Thompson stood at the edge of transformation, the walls of his corporate existence shaking around him. The journey he had embarked on was nothing short of monumental, as he faced his fears and vulnerabilities head-on, supported by the growing trust within his team. Every hesitation and every question paved the way for authentic leadership, guiding him toward not only professional fulfillment but personal redemption. As the door swung closed behind the unexpected newcomer, Jack's mind raced. The lessons of authenticity and vulnerability he aimed to embed within the team were now on the brink of a defining test. He caught a glimpse of Maria's unwavering support in his mind's eye, reminding him that real growth came from stepping into the unknown. It fortified his resolve. This was not only about him but about fostering a brave space for his colleagues to reclaim their false narratives, too. "Thank you for your patience, everyone," he began as his voice broke through the uncertainty. "Today marks a new chapter for our team. I am here, not just as your CEO, but as a man willing to risk everything for change. I want us to share our failures, our fears, and our triumphs." As he spoke, he felt the collective gaze of his team, filled with curiosity and cautious optimism. Each expression told him that this openness was what they craved, a bridge to deeper connections that had long been ignored. "I've spent years building a persona defined by success, but I realize now that true leadership is about being real," he confessed, laying bare his own journey filled with missteps and failures. I've felt the weight of expectation, the fear of disappointing you all if I showed weakness. But this isn't just about me, this is about us. A palpable shift began to wash over the group. Jack recounted moments of his past where he had faltered, allowing themselves to laugh and share in the discomfort of vulnerability. With each story, they began to loosen their guarded facades, inching closer toward honest conversations that had long eluded them. Carl, his usual skepticism now tinged with a hint of admiration, stepped forward. Jack, I appreciate you stepping up like this. I can't promise I won't have doubts, but I can commit to exploring this new direction alongside you. Clara, another team member, nodded vigorously in agreement. We all have our stories, our failures. It's time we started sharing them instead of hiding them. The dialogue that ensued was rich and raw. Colleagues exchanged their experiences, their fears, and the burdens they had carried in silence. The room felt lighter, charged with newfound authenticity that had been suppressed for far too long. Jack realized he was no longer merely a CEO standing at the helm. He was a facilitator of change, a conduit for vulnerability that bred innovation and connection. The sessions became a grounding practice for the team, establishing a culture of safety and trust. Together, they drafted a charter for their vulnerability sessions that ensured everyone could voice their opinions and insights freely, creating an environment that transcended the fear of fallibility. The results were palpable. A sense of belonging burgeoned as creativity sparked and collaboration flourished. Jack watched as his colleagues transformed, shedding years of corporate conditioning in favor of mutual support and resilience. Months passed, and not only did their financial metrics improve, but the company's culture shifted toward one that valued authenticity over illusion. Jack was recognized not just for his professional accolades, but for his groundbreaking leadership approach that encouraged connection and courage. Then one evening, as Jack left the office, a sense of satisfaction swelled within him. Each interaction took on new meaning, each conversation echoing the authenticity he valued. He glanced at his phone. Messages from Maria flowed in, highlighting her unwavering support and belief in his journey. That night, as he sat with a cup of coffee, he realized the true measure of success lay not in the numbers but in the relationships fostered, the risks taken, and the triumphs over adversity. He had found his stride as a leader, with solid confidence rooted in authenticity. Jack Thompson emerged as not only a figurehead but as a true embodiment of values he deeply respected, a man who proved love and vulnerability could indeed triumph over fear and isolation. In a world often obsessed with facades, he had chosen to cultivate a space of genuine connection, paving the way for himself, his colleagues, and perhaps the resonating realms beyond. Now, it's your turn to embrace the stories of transformation and change. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss your chance to witness more exclusive emotional journeys like this one. Leave a like now to ensure the algorithm knows you want to see more inspiring content. Comment below with your reactions and theories on what transformation means to you, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this empowering conclusion. True fans of personal overcoming stories need to rise and show support.